What a night. What a night. What a night. You couldn't have asked for anything better. This is the Broad Street Hockey Postgame Show. I am Jacob Russell, and that is probably the most quintessential Flyers regular season win you could maybe ever imagine. Flyers bully the Ducks off the ice at home at the Wells Fargo Center. 6-0 was your final score, and anything you wanted, anything you would have dreamed of when you went to bed, when a Flyers fan went to bed last night, it all happened. It all happened, and it was perfect. It was just perfect. You've seen that meme. The Drysdale goal, the Mishkov goal, Gauthier getting just hammered every time he came on the ice with chants that are probably not even safe for work. Never mind safe for the broadcast. And it was like almost too perfect. It's almost unbelievable that it was able to all unfold this way, but the Flyers bullied the Ducks off the ice. They continue this sort of this trend of being so good against teams that just can't work as hard as them. And the Ducks were never there. The Ducks, there was Frankie Vitrano trying to stir it up with the Flyers when the Flyers were going after he who shall not be named early on in the game. But that was really all the pushback the Ducks had. Play-wise, there was nothing. The Flyers played the vast majority of this game in the Ducks zone, and it never wavered once. From minute 1 to minute 60, the Flyers dominated physically and through the play. The fans were amazing tonight. It was absolutely electric. I couldn't even imagine what it was like to actually be in that building and experience all of that vitriol. I'll say it. It's vitriol. It's not often when you see a team and a fan base so aligned on a common goal that isn't winning the Stanley Cup. But the Flyers and Flyers fans, they knew what time it was tonight. Travis Konecny, 4 primary assists. Jamie Drysdale snaps his goalless drought with a power play tally, which helps the Flyers get off the schneid in general on the man advantage. And, Matvei Mishkov, he also tallies another power play goal later, and he helps himself, kind of get back in a rhythm after he went through a pretty lengthy dry spell goal scoring wise. Gives a good old stick twirl, and that's all she wrote, baby. That was absolutely fantastic. Samuel Ersson, it's not going to be remembered in a 6-0 game, but 22 shots, 22 saves. The Ducks didn't offer much to challenge him, but man, was he good when he needed to be. And man, now that I just had to get all of that out. I said get all that out, and now maybe we can start to pick through some of the wreckage here as the Flyers just destroy the Ducks 6-0 tonight on home ice. And you knew it was going to be bad when Gauthier took the ice, right? You knew that he was going to get it with both barrels, and he did the entire way through. The fuck you Cutter chants, not necessarily surprising, not necessarily a shock, but the Jamie's better. I gotta say that was absolutely hilarious when I heard that one ringing around. And Drysdale, was able to finally start to show why he came with such pedigree into the NHL, right? That little cut on the power play, able to find the feed from Konecny and slide it home. And that just, it was only 2-0 at that point, but that just set the fuse, that lit the fuse. And from that point on, it just seemed like the Flyers were in cruise control. It was one of the few times this season. This is one of the only times that they've scored 6+ goals. The only other time they did was against the Wild on October 26th when they won 7-5 against Minnesota. But this was one where you felt like it was men against boys. The Flyers physically set the tone early and often, and they just seemed like they had a little bit more juice for this game than maybe some other contests. You heard in the intermission, I believe it's the second intermission, Travis Konecny talking about Cutter Gauthier as he was being interviewed in between periods, and you can hear it. It's actually kind of funny because it's not as if Cutter was here for a few years and then left and like asked out, right? I don't think these guys really met him, right? They never really got to know him on a personal level. But I think it's this, and Konecny himself during the interview says like, yeah, we're giving the kid a hard time. You know, it's not personal to him entirely. It is kind of a little bit. It is a little personal, definitely, but it's not entirely that. It's not entirely bad natured. I think the team tonight just kind of used Cutter and the whole situation and wanting to also lift up Jamie Drysdale, who has struggled, and get themselves out of a sort of a lull, that they've been going through over the past couple of weeks. And I think Konecny, I think the leadership group, they just used that as fuel for the fire. And they brought it tonight. They were fantastic. And JJ said it on the broadcast, just about how the more established Flyers, the Sanheims of the world, the Konecnys, even Ristolainen, right? He throws a big hit on Gauthier and made a fantastic defensive play to strip Mason McTavish, I believe, in the first period. That really stood out as well. The Ducks are a young team. They're a quick team, and they're not particularly good at any facet of the game. I think if they didn't have Lucas Dostal and John Gibson in net, although Gibson looked a little rough tonight, and will go out with wishing that he probably saved more of the shots than he did. But, I think the Ducks are kind of the opposite of the Flyers in that if they didn't have those two decent goalies, they would be in a really bad spot. They're simply just not that good of a team. But they are quick. They do have the ability to explode on you if you don't take them seriously, if you don't, set the tone early. But the Flyers did, and that dogged work, that determination, that just mean, nasty edge was just on full display. And it just felt different than any other game this year. It felt different than any other game last year, right? Like this was a throwback to those mid 2010s, early 2010s sorts of Flyers Penguins games where it's just a melee the entire time. Even, there were some games with the Rangers, some games with the Devils, more rivalry focused matchups where the building would be rocking and everyone would be ready, raring to go, and bodies are flying, and there's actual hatred in between the two teams. And not a lot of, it's the nature of how the Flyers have been playing over the last few years that those moments don't necessarily happen as much. But man, it was just fantastic to see everybody come out so quick, so heavy, and the Ducks never really stood a chance. Gauthier, yeah, I believe you're right, Christian. I think Gauthier may have gotten benched in the third period. I'm not exactly sure. It's hard to find the minutes exactly right after the game, right? But I think the broadcast mentioned it as well. They bullied him off the ice. It sounds hyperbolic. It sounds like I'm hating almost, but they bullied him off the ice. He wanted nothing to do with any scrums, with anybody trying to drag him in. You saw Hathaway trying to drag him into the scrums, try to get him a little, rouse a bit of a reaction out of him. He didn't ever do it. He didn't do that. And it is cliche. It does sound kind of stupid when you say it, right? It sounds homerish, but that's not a Flyer. He's not. It just doesn't seem like that's the case. Matvei Mishkov has Radko Gudas, that big old caveman, our old best friend from back in the day. He's grabbing him and jostling him around behind the net, and Mishkov will throw a couple punches at him. He's just looking at the ref like, what am I doing? I don't do it. He shouldn't have got a penalty on that play either. But regardless, you have to take two in that instance, yada, yada, yada. That's just how the NHL works. But, Mishkov's just looking at him. He knows his teammates are going to have his back, and they did. And they did tonight at just the same way they had Jamie Drysdale's back, and they have throughout the season. I think that's a huge turning point win for the team. Maybe not in the standings. I think there's definitely – it's going to be an uphill battle to try and really make this team, with the goaltending that they have, with the center depth that they have, really make a push to the playoffs, especially when there's so many teams in front of or behind them who are going to put up a fight, right? It's going to be a similar end to the season as maybe last year was, right? But it does feel good to see these guys go out there and just beat the shit out of a bad team and just, you know, prove a point. They proved a point tonight, and it was fantastic to see. TK, 4 assists, 4 primary assists. He looks like one of the best, wingers in hockey at this point. I mean, he's maybe not, he doesn't have the flash of a Mikko Rantanen or, an Ovechkin type guy who's going to go in the end and has that big, huge one-timer. But he is effective. He's simple, he's effective, and he gets under opponent's skin, and he's on fire right now. He looks fantastic. He's leading the team offensively. And it's just been great to watch. It's great to see. He works so hard, and no matter who you play him with, it seems like he just is always effective, right? That fourth line, Ryan Poehling, Garnet Hathaway, they were out there and they made a difference every time they were on the ice. The whole team made a difference every time they were on the ice. Mishkov gets his 13th goal, another power play tally for the young Russian, and man, there's almost too many things to get into. There's almost so much to digest from that. It's better to just take it as it is. It's just enjoy it. It's a beautiful night. It's a beautiful night where everyone in the city, every Flyers fan from coast to coast was able to come together and just hate on a 20-something-year-old for a night, regardless of where the team will end up in the future, regardless of playoffs, regardless of draft odds. The Flyers tonight were just able to get really pissed off and play a perfect hockey game. I mean, I don't think they have had one better this entire season than that, and it's great to see. It's fantastic. As we want to go back to Drysdale again, he looked a lot more confident, just sort of maneuvering, I thought, at the top of the power play. It's tough because he is a small guy, and in games like this where it starts to get a little bit chippy and it starts to get a little bit more back and forth, it's you're always wondering if you can hold up in the corners, if you can hold up throughout, a full season of these really heavy games, right? Playoff type games. And I think he acquitted himself really well tonight. Besides the goal, right? Obviously, that's a great little cut move to get the pass from Konecny and slide it 5-hole on Gibson. But I think he showed that he has that sort of personality trait to where if he's going to face some adversity, if he's going to find a bit of resistance on the other side, if guys are going to try to run at him here and there, if guys are going to try and play him a bit more tougher in the corners, dump it in and chase it into his corner, he's going to not, wilt like Cutter did today. I think it's really good that we can see him in these types of games, even if they're not playoff implications. They're still highly contested games that mean a lot to the fans and to the rest of the guys in the lineup. And I think it's great that the team responded like this. I think it's great that they were able to just go out there and, pick up their guy and put down the other guy and do a great job doing it as well. Finally, I think I'd be remiss if I just didn't, have a little hate sesh for our boy, Quitter, who, I don't want to be too harsh because I think it is a little bit, he's going to get it from people worse than me, right? I'm going to be a bit more eloquent about it than probably a lot of the fans were in their criticisms during the game, but that was fucking embarrassing. That was embarrassing. from a guy who is a high draft pick, from a guy who has high pedigree coming out of the college ranks, who talks a big game, who is in the media. You don't have to say these things, right? You don't have to make quotes pregame. You don't have to go out there and say, I wish the fans knew the truth. That you will not tell the fans, and have refused to tell the fans the entire time, and is the entire reason why the fans were mad at you in the first place. That you don't have to do all of that. You can be quiet. You can just go play. You could say, I'm sorry to the Philadelphia fans. I felt this was a better fit for me in my development. I blah, 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 blah. I think, most of the Flyers fans are still going to be a vocal minority, maybe even, 40% minority, a pretty sizable minority who will be justifiably angry at you still. But if you would have said anything in the beginning, it wouldn't have gotten to this point. And it's gotten to this point, and even with the team, you could see the Flyers made it a point from minute one to just get in his grill and not let up. And while this team isn't necessarily filled with bruisers the way it was in the past, I would not want to spend a full game with Rasmus Ristolainen, Travis Konecny, Garnet Hathaway just beaking me and shouldering me into the boards and throwing the body and rubbing me out. And Cutter simply just couldn't deal with it. He could not deal with it today. He was absolutely invisible for a majority of the game. And you can even see at certain points later on in the game, before he was benched or his ice time was cut, whatever ended up happening there in the third period, you could see where there were moments that he just kind of lost the puck, dribbled up his stick. He had a chance to shoot, and he just wasn't able to get it away. He succumbed to the pressure, of a forechecker and lost the puck. I believe it was Tippett who may have stripped him later in the third or in the second, and that might have led to him being put on the bench for a lot of that third period. But yeah, he simply just didn't acquit himself well in this game. It's going to be tough. Like, it was always going to be tough to come to Philly for the first time, right? That was always going to be tough. I doubt it's going to get any easier for him, especially now. But it was always going to be tough to come there. But he was so bad in the way that he handled it. It looked like he didn't want to be out there. I don't want to put this out there. I don't want to ever question an NHL player's willingness to play, right? Because they are the toughest athletes in the world. They do have, a different sort of mentality than any other real athlete, bar maybe, MMA fighters or football players or somebody who's in an actual combat sport, a literal combat sport. But I wouldn't be shocked if Cutter just said in the second intermission, I'm done. I'm out. I don't want to go back out there and then play another 6 minutes of people relentlessly booing me and telling me that the guy that they traded for me is better, and getting, run around by this big Finnish guy who's on the back end who's suddenly learned how to lay the body and rub guys out along the wall. And I don't ever want to suggest that, but it did seem like he just didn't want to be there. He just really would rather be playing against San Jose at 10:59 Eastern Standard with nobody watching, and just play over there and just stay over there. And he got thrown in the spotlight today, and it did not look good. It did not look good. And you got to remember, this is not a bum. He is not a bad hockey player. He is a very highly touted player, but he looked terrible tonight. And if I was a Ducks fan, wherever I was, if I was a Ducks fan, I would be a little worried about how he played tonight. And obviously, he's going to have a long career. He's going to have a lot of, he's going to have a lot of time to grow and to change as a player. But oh my God, like, he didn't even do anything. He didn't get involved in a scrum. At least throw a wild left hand at somebody, paw at somebody, throw a face wash out there. Like, I mean, this is, I think for him, it's only going to get worse from this point now, because he and his team, frankly, have allowed the the Flyers fans to smell blood in the water, and yeah, he flinched tonight. He flinched tonight. The Ducks flinched tonight, and the Flyers were absolutely fantastic from minute one and just ran him out the building. It was great to see. Garnet Hathaway, 2-point night, along with Ryan Paling. Morgan Frost, a goal and assist as well, and Owen Tippett. Owen Tippett finally gets a multi-point game again. Starts to look a little bit better in a game where the Flyers were pretty dominant the entire way through. I can actually just check. Let me check the ice time. So Cutter Gauthier finished with 0 goals, 0 assists, 0 points. You all knew that. It was a shutout, but I'll just I'm gonna hammer it home. 0-0-0-0 -1 for Cutter tonight, and he had 13-19 out there. So he was the 4th lowest Ducks forward ice time wise, only trailed by Jansen Harkins, Sam Colangelo, and Ross Johnson, who are all 3 of those guys. I mean, frankly, are not NHL hockey players. Sam Colangelo had a terrible play that led to a goal in that game. So 13-19 for Cutter behind Frankie Vetrano, who was also had a penalty as well, right? So that brings his time on ice down. But he had the same amount of shifts as Harkins in that 4th line, right? So I think he definitely in the 3rd at least had his minutes cut. I don't think he would have been totally benched, but he definitely had his minutes cut. They gave him credit for 2 hits as well, which I guess, whatever. Sure. But yeah, good game all around from the Flyers. I think that we're going to look back at the end of the season and we're going to see this one as, if not the crowning moment of the season, it's definitely going to be close. This was everything you could have asked for the Flyers. They were just so good the entire way through. They really didn't ever miss a beat from minute one. I mean, that first shift, even there was an icing call on the first shift, and that it was about 10 seconds after the opening faceoff. There's a phantom icing call. They brought it back to center ice. So basically, they started the game over at 1949, I think, because there was a phantom icing call that was brought back because I think Paling was he totally won that race. I don't know why they didn't blew it dead to begin with, but so from that minute on, from 1949, when they dropped that puck for the second time, the Flyers were elite. They were elite. And again, Ducks are terrible opposition, and the Flyers will continue to beat up on bad opposition. But it is actually heartening to see that in comparison to other mid teams, bad teams, whatever you'd want to you'd prefer to call them, the Flyers will beat them. They will kick their ass. They've done it pretty frequently. They've had some games against the Sharks and against the Ducks that look like they played them out of the building. And even if it wasn't the scoreline didn't show it, if you watched the game, you knew that they outplayed them, they outworked them. And it's good to see, right? Because then you can kind of extrapolate on that. You add a couple more skill players. You add a Jet Luchenko with some seasoning. You add another center. You add a goalie who can sustain an above 900 save percentage, not to throw shots at Sam Erson after he just put a 0 pitched a shutout out there. But the truth is the truth. Nobody on the Flyers have above 900 save percentage currently. Then you can see how you can make that leap to start beating even better teams in the future and start competing for playoff spots. And, once you get in the playoffs in the NHL, if you're good enough, you never know. So it is about acquiring more pieces, but the Flyers are better than teams that are outright tanking, right? And even if the Flyers themselves with 3 first-round picks, they're still in that sort of rebuilding phase. They're not as bad as the Ducks or the Sharks. They're better than the real bottom feeders. And I think that's at least encouraging to the level of the talent that they currently possess, right? Even if they don't keep a lot of them, and even if a lot of them start to, be used as trade pieces in the future, either way, it's good that they can show that they can at least beat some teams, no matter how bad they are. I mean, they're still NHL opposition. Just to touch on one more thing before we get out of here on this great night here, January 11th, that will go down in history. Noah Cates, most time on ice for the Flyers tonight. The Flyers forwards tonight. 17:12 for Cates, 17:07 for Forster. That's a minute more than over a minute more than the next closest forward, which was Matvei Mishkov with 15:57. But yeah, Cates and Forster really getting ridden right now by John Tortorella. Both have been fantastic in both all three zones recently, and both are playing on that line with Bobby Brink, who was also up there in terms of ice time with 15:45. Yeah, that line has continued to be really good, and I think especially against teams like the Ducks, right, who aren't going to necessarily bring the most elite of elite NHL offensive talent against you. I think that like those teams are going to have a lot of trouble with guys like Noah Cates and Tyson Forster, who can play a good defensive game, possess the puck, and also make offense happen on the other end, right? Because Noah Cates can shut down Mason McTavish, right? The Mason McTavish line, Noah Cates can do his job, and he can close him off and shut his well off and make it really hard for them to create offense. Same with Tyson Forster. But when you elevate those guys to like a Alexander Barkov, the Pasternaks of the world, the elite of the elite, McDavid's, it's going to be a lot tougher, obviously, right? It's going to be a lot tougher for Case to do that same thing. But in these matchups where the Ducks aren't necessarily good at all, Cates looked fantastic again. Didn't end up getting any points tonight, but it's more so about just that minutes load going up and him still looking quality in all three zones. But yeah, that was about all I have for you tonight. I was flying solo tonight. I really wish I could have got some more feedback from somebody who was in the arena, because I know it was electric. Probably the most electric it's been in I don't know how long. As long as you can remember, as long as the playoffs have been out of Philly, it hasn't been as fired up inside the Farg since the playoff runs of the past. But it was great to talk to everybody here today. Thank you for tuning in to the Broad Street Hockey post game show. Fuck you, Cutter, and have a good night.